Hello and welcome back to another new edition of Windows on Current Affairs, and happy Bayram to all of you. Of course, this is the last day of Bayram, and still Egyptians are celebrating and rejoicing together regardless of their religions, regardless of their differences, if they're all present in Egypt or in any other place outside Cairo. They are rejoicing together and feasting in gatherings. And today we continue to talk about tourism and how tourism have boomed in the past 4 years, especially a new type of tourism, a new market. The African tourism have emerged significantly, especially after Egypt have assumed the chairmanship of the AU, the African Union, and also after AFCON, the Africa Cup of Nations. Of course, with the event of Africa Cup of Nations, there were many batches of tourists, African tourists, Nile Basin countries coming over, parallel to that event. We're going to be embarking over these particular elements or issues of the African tourism, and what is required now by the Egyptian government, what is required by the Ministry of Tourism, by our tourism experts, and all those who are involved in that particular field and medium. We're going to be talking about that in our special episode about the African tourism. We're very delighted to be having with us special tourism experts, Ms. Shaimaa Ismail and Mr. Sherief Hassan. They're present with us here live in the studio. Good evening, and happy Eid to you. Eid Mubarak to you both.
Thank you.
Let me start with you, Ms. Shaimaa or Shaimaa. We need to talk about the emerge of the African tourism. It have started significantly. We haven't been used to hear about the African tourism. We used to hear about the European tourism, the Chinese, the Japanese, or the American, maybe other types of tourism, but the African tourism, what does it mean? And who is African tourism? Which countries? Is it the North African tourism or the our brotherly nations the African nations, the Nile Basin countries, and etc. So if you would like to give us a definition of the African tourism to us Egyptians.
African tourism, it was not a new field for us, but maybe we start to be under spot and we start to understand it more and more about it. How when the African nations start, or the Cup of Nations start, it was a great chance given to everybody to know them together. So we discover, oh my God, there are a lot of them. And it's a great field. It could be start with as a tourism field. Most of the time, through the whole years we are passing before, we was just concentrated, as you mentioned, for a while, in the in American and in European fields. We don't have much attention and not much care about the African tourism. Maybe because we didn't know much information about that part. I'm speaking about more the brother relationship with the neighbors, like countries of the Nile Basin. The African tournament, it was a great chance given to everybody, and I guess for both sides, for the Africans and for Egyptians. We have a little companies, few of them, was working in the field of tourism, African tourism, and I was lucky to work with them over than 18 years. And they are so little, as I mentioned, and very special and a specific destination. As example, of South African and Kenya. This is the two famous destinations which they came to Egypt through the past years. It's beautiful. It's have a great, charming, natural countries. But we still have a lot of ignorance and a lot of short information about these countries. So most of the companies just give attention to the other part of the world. And I guess this will be recorrected later after we finish the tournament or the championship. African tourism, this is our new goal, our new first treasure we discovered together all, especially after the Nation Cup. I guess it will be a great field, a chance given to all the Egyptian companies to restart to adjusting and created a new field in African countries. For North African countries like Algerian, like Indonesian, no, we have already that field is already secured. We have a lot of companies in Egypt work in that field long time ago. So we have no problem in our existing there. Our real problem with our neighbors, brothers down. I mean, South Egypt, all the countries down, we need to reconstruct the relationship and the tourism line between.
Should we reconstruct the relationship, or should we reintroduce ourselves?
We should introduce, not reintroduce, because nobody's there. When I have a relationship with them personally and through my work, I discovered there's nobody there from our part. We are the one who committed the mistake, the neglect from our side. Of course, we didn't mean it, the neglect, but the results, we have a great neglect. These people know nothing about Egypt. And my big surprise and a shock, it was some people asking me, what is the pyramid? Can you imagine? That meaning we are not there. So we need to be there first to introduce ourselves as a country brother relationship and as a tourist field attraction. This is come through many ways. We can do that together.
Right, Mr. Sherief, let me take it from Ms. Shaimaa and bring it over to you. The issue of people from our neighboring brotherly countries not even knowing about the pyramids. The pyramids are amongst, regardless if they are in Egypt or anywhere else, they are amongst the 7 wonders of the world. So is it our problems? I mean, it's a little bit of maybe we did not promote enough for ourselves at that particular area in the world for a long time during the Mubarak era. Or maybe, I mean, there are many possibilities, but not knowing about one of the 7 wonders of the world, and on top of the 7 wonders of the world, could it be our fault? Or could it be that culture that needs study, and that we need to understand that this type of culture is not really very, maybe curious enough to examine the 7 wonders of the world, the history of that country.
I think it's Americans, Europeans, Australians, different continents. You study all that at school when they're young, so they know about it. I don't know about the education in these African countries, but I think the Egyptians have had the lesson after having that from 2011 when the tourism is down. Most of the countries, like, that get a lot of strong media and tells them that there is terrorism and whatever happening, and that the market towards the Europeans, Americans and Australians, Canada, have given a lot of warnings for coming to Egypt. And then when the case started to get better, still not a lot of Americans, Europeans are still afraid or being scared to come, even though that it's much better now and the situation is really secure. So I think the other part of the world where we was not really advertised well at, which is African continent and other parts of the world, we should start to advertise there. They have no fear. They have no problems. The relationship and we're very close. The airfares are not going to be that high. They're not going to spend so much money on traveling to Egypt. And they definitely can, if any case of having not much tourists coming from other side, it needs to be covered, the hotels needs to be having, or the hotels and the tours needs to fill up with other category or other tourists coming from Africa. I'm not saying this is just in general, but at the same time, I think we need to be studying the new market, which is the African market, by knowing how to advertise, the type of tourists they want, the vacations they have. This is a new market for us, and it needs to be discovered. maybe they don't really study well about Egypt when they're young, and they don't read much about it. It's not really like I wouldn't say well educated, but maybe they don't get that information much over there, although that we're still in the same continent. And that's why it's our role to actually transfer all this information to them through the media, through advertising, through even like, you know, seeing what we can actually do as the relationship part of, you know, sort of politics between Egypt and these African countries. And I think that will help so much. Yani I could see the chance of having a great event like, you know, the African Nations Cup over here. That was actually a really great chance for them to come and to at least know that Egypt is safe, Egypt is good, there's a lot of monuments in here, and this is we need to continue with the same line, like, you know, get a lot of events from Africa happening in Egypt, get a lot of chances to know how to advertise well over there. There's a lot of travel agents that when they sell the tours, you know, they don't sell the tours only Egypt. We have, like, you know, they come to Egypt, Jordan, let us say they target,
Israel, yes, true.
you know, yeah, there's a lot of
True,
Egypt,
yeah.
Jordan, Syria, Tunisia, Algeria, Lebanon. So by this way, you can actually get bigger markets, and you can actually get, you know, tourists that comes to Egypt, like, you know, from the north, can actually come to these African countries. On the other side, we can get a lot of African tourists coming to Egypt. Their weather is very close to our weather. I mean, they don't really fear the heat because there's a lot of African countries. that
No,
get
they
all
are, by the way.
Yeah, I
Even
know
our
that.
heat, for them it's very high temperature,
Yeah,
but it's no
not
problem. No,
problem.
no.
It's
Like
a
the
high
Middle
temperature.
Africans and the
True.
North Africans, there's no problems
Most
about
of
that.
the
So-
African countries, they have a stable weather, like 25 degrees all over the year. They don't have much
the
four
south,
seasons
yeah.
like we have. So they have some countries also is raining most of the time, but the weather is still be like 25, 30 degrees around.
North Africans, Middle Africans will have the same type of weather. So it's easy for them, you know, to come during the summer, which is we having low season. And that will actually make, you know, a good chance for actually getting, filling up, like, you know, the hotels and getting more tours happening.
And I
in
can
here
add
getting
it one
more-
point to his speech, if you don't mind, that we need to be there. For your point, which I like so much, how can we invest that very well? It's our mistake because these people don't know anything about us. Yes, of course, it's our big mistake. We are not there by some ways. We should send it some Egyptian teachers, no problem, for historical part, as Mr. Sherief mentioned, that most of the European learning Egyptian history through their schools. So it's one of the main system in their schools. We don't have the same thing in African. And African, they should be closer. Could you imagine? So it's if this not exist, we have to find a reason why these people try to neglect our history. Maybe they don't know or they don't like. Any one of these post points, we need to solve it by some ways. Quick solutions. We need to be closer. We need to send one of our part officially, or by the tourist companies, as I mentioned. We should cooperate together to be one of the ways exist there, by music, by art. Tell them about the Egyptian art, Egyptian music. So there is many ways we can organize to be exist there, but this should be quickly to capture the goals of the National Cup.
Right, you're very right. And as a step from the Egyptian administration, it has included immediately after the AFCON and after assuming the chairmanship of the AU, it have included African youth inside the PLP, the Presidential Leadership Program, which was targeting Egyptian youth. It also included more than 100 African youth also in that particular program, and they were graduated and they were honored by His Excellency the Head of State President Abdel Fattah Sisi in the recent African Youth forum or conference that was held. So this was another attempt or one of the steps of the soft power taken by the Egyptian administration.
Yes.
And we have all seen the African youth going over the stage to be awarded by the president and graduated personally by him.
This is great. This is what we're talking about exactly, about the soft power. And I think that tourism is one of the best soft power. So why we are not organized charter planes like we do exactly with European field? Why we are not doing like a packages, cheap prices and attractive, short to Egypt? To encourage these people to come to another destination called Egypt. I guess this will be a very lovely, and the Ministry of Tourism should have a big field, a big hand in that field, to be involved in that part and to have some kind of advertising there to encourage the people. I met some of the people who come to the championship. They win through one of the companies, like a competition, and a companies, phone companies or tourist companies, they make like a competition, and one of them and some of them win, and the prize was to come to Egypt. Why we are not do the same? Why we spending a lot of money for make propaganda and advertising through the TV? We can make saving some part of this percentage, like 10 or 15% of this in a solid money, and invite them and make a competitions and invite them to come to Egypt.
And a lot of
This will be perfect, exactly. And we sharing them that. So this will be healthy.
That will work so much. One more thing is about the big gap that was there between us and a lot of African countries. I think this was there for over 30 or 40 years. Since the revolution of 1952 was happening, and Nasser was a big hero for a lot of African countries for trying to free these African countries from occupations. I think all of them remember that, but since then their relationship have been totally cut. I wouldn't say cut as like, politically, but I would say that we don't know much about them, they don't know much about us, and that gap needed to be like, sort of at least finished, shut up that gap. We need to get relationship back, and that's through use sort of like events, like President Sisi have already held one, and that I think that give a lot of ideas for a lot of young African people that about the Egyptians and how they can come here, they can actually express their problems too, and that means a lot, definitely. Yeah. And I think that will really one of the things that will work so much to try to get. It's not just about tourism, but about getting a lot of African countries back again to each other's and.
This is very important side of the story, because I saw them and I have a good relationship with them, and when we have a conversation about Egypt, I discovered a very important problem. Majority of African countries, they are like empty jar. It's required to fill with something. If you are not the person who fill it with a positive ideas, it will be the other side will be negative. And the Nile is there, and we understand the importance of these countries later after the arguments about the bridge and the new dam of Ethiopians guy, and we start to understand there is a real danger could be happen from there. They want to tell us we are here, we are important people, you can't neglect, we can't just ignoring us like we are not there somewhere. Understand? So sometimes your small kids do a big disaster to attract your eyes. Oh, I'm here, Mom. I'm not just forgotten. Exactly, this is what happened with them sometimes. They want to improving for us. They have the power. They are not just bad guys, or not under the spot from our side. This is what we understand very well, and I wish to invest that through the next steps in the future.
That is great to hear. But also when we talk about this, and we talk about we need to have representatives that could talk as much as we can about our history, about our trades, about what we like, about what we can introduce for our visitors, how friendly we are, the cultural experience they can have when they come over to Egypt and all that. What type of tourism is the African tourism? I mean, what do they prefer? What type of cuisine would they be attracted to? I mean, we have also gastronomy, I mean, tourism over here, and we have amazing tourism. We have amazing cuisine because our food is organic. Their food is nice also and delicious, but there are certain types of elements to attract specific tourists. I mean, that type of tourists.
That's what needed to be studied, especially that I would say they've got the beaches too. In some African countries, really nice beaches. Was almost sharing, almost like, you know, some of them are sharing the Red Sea with us. Some of them are also have got a lot of really nice nature. I think the social media should push a lot of videos about Egypt to them, unless if they don't know about.
Are they into monuments? Are they into festivities and celebrating and entertainment?
With our monuments. Everyone in the
Are
world.
they into cuisine?
But let's be honest, no. Africa, not majority of them, especially there is some countries, they are focused in a little amount of the cultural information. And they are looking for more for the religion places.
Religious
so we have
tourism.
Yes, exactly. So we have the religion tourism is very working here in Egypt for African side. So we are organize a big tour like Mr. Sherief mentioned. We do Egypt, Jordan, and Israel. So they come through the whole places for the holy journey for the Christ. They follow the steps. They come first Egypt, then Israel, Jordan, and come back to Egypt sometimes, or they leave from Israel. This is one of the very successful fields. Another field also, it's as Mr. Sherief said, the beaches is very attractive side, especially the Suez Canal. Suez Canal is a dream like the pyramid for most of Africans. Everybody
the Suez Canal.
The Suez Canal.
Why in particular the Suez Canal?
Because they hear about it from Nasser time and how it's a target for everybody, and it's the most famous artificial canal all over the world. So everybody knows really about them more than the pyramids. Could you imagine?
President Nasser have really
have been really effective,
thing for them because he shared he helped a lot of African countries for their freedom. 1950s and 1960s, and that's why a lot of them owes Egypt for that. But since then, the relation, we didn't have much to do together. And I think now it needed to come back through that. The religious tours, the tours like, you know, to the Suez Canal definitely, and definitely the monuments. I would say still they're going to be fascinated with our monuments, the pyramids, but they didn't really study much about it. But when they come and see it and we'll tell them about it, I think they will be happy definitely with that.
But speaking about President Nasser, at that time, well, they had that very tight bond with our brotherly African nations. It was the Egyptian church and the Pope at that time who used to unify all our African neighborly brothers. And we remember the emperor who came over by the time of Nasser, just before he was, I think he was his enthronement, and he came over to Egypt. I mean, there was a certain significance for the Egyptian cathedral because the Pope was the Pope for all the region of Africa. And we had a certain significance, they used to hold us at a certain space in their hearts when it comes to the Egyptian church. Is it still the same?
It depends on, like, you know, not all of them are Coptic Christians, but at least the first church in Egypt and Africa was actually was built in here in Alexandria and was destroyed and was actually moved, most parts of it, to the what we call now the Hanging Church in Coptic Cairo. So it got definitely a lot of significance, not just like that. The journey of the Holy Family, the Virgin Mary,
this
Jesus,
is for everyone.
and Joseph. Yeah.
This is for
Virgin
everyone.
Mary, Jesus, and
Amazing.
Joseph.
Yeah, of course.
And they have actually moved from Jerusalem down to Egypt, and they stayed over 3 years in here. They stayed in different spots, and that's one of the big targets. One of the big targets for a lot of tourists is joining what we call it the trip of the Holy Family in Egypt.
Do you think that the trip of the Holy Family is going to be one of the most booming futures for tourism.
It is now, actually.
If we invest on it,
of course.
Now that we
It's
have
have
from India, there's
groups,
really
of
lots of
course.
tourists coming from India.
Not
to
only
do
from
that.
from
lots
Africa,
of
from
people,
a lot
I
of
mean,
everybody.
experts were really focusing over
And
the
also
holy
the
economy.
idea that Moses received the 10 Commandments in Egypt, the journey of Moses also, then the Jews in Egypt also, it's one of the very, very important categories come to Egypt just for this. We need to invest in that very well.
We have footage here of one of the best times. I mean, the bond that was taken by President late Nasser, Gamal Abdel Nasser, the golden time, and also by President Sisi also is the golden time. Actually, we could say
It's coming back.
we can easily say that by the time of President Abdel Fattah Sisi is at the top notch, the peak of the golden time between Egypt and its brotherly nations in Africa.
Because he's a very smart person.
Because
He
he's
realized
very
the
good with foreign
importance.
relations,
Exactly.
he's very good with soft power, and he's very smart with politics also when it comes, and like you said, Ms. Shaimaa, also that you cannot detach politics from tourism, from economy, from, from culture.
True.
And he is very smart blending all these elements together.
And
He
we
did
need to
already
help him.
with all
He can't
the
work alone.
conferences that are held in Egypt.
You know, we
with all
need
the
to carry the
tournaments.
responsibility with him too, because it's all our home, and we need to feel the responsibility as he do it exactly.
Do you think that President Sisi is taking over from the time of late Nasser and continuing building on? And as we can easily see that he is retaining, he is reviving that golden era back again and adding to it.
We have to.
Definitely, yes. I think
Do you agree with me?
I
that-
agree 100%. But we need also to spot to him the light in some points we know and we discovered. Because sometimes when you see by yourself on, you don't see all the sides. This is our part, how to help the partner to pass to the right point. So Mr. Abdel Fattah Sisi, he do all his great work, and we need to help him to involve with that work to 100% succeeded. So we
True.
need that very well.
That's very true. How have the tourism market changed over the past 3 years? Or let me put it more clear, after Egypt have assumed the African Union, the chairmanship of the African Union, after Egypt have becoming, set it at the first and foremost of its agenda to come closer to our brotherly nations, according to the directives of President Abdel Fattah Sisi. How do you think that have changed the tourism map, the touristic map here in Egypt?
I think the touristic map have actually, I think the Egyptians are getting really intelligent in that, especially and before most of the targeting of the, which markets were targeted, which is the ones Europe or America or North sort of like countries. And so when they realized that any little issue or any news that will come up, they will fear so much to come, and they will have the media over there does not really give them the right information all the time. We needed to have another plan B, and plan B now is getting to be plan A. So we need to target other countries. That will help us to fill up the gap we're missing when the tourism is down.
Yes.
When the tourism was down 2011, 2012, and the Egyptian government was encouraging the Egyptians to go to Sharm el-Sheikh, Hurghada, to enjoy these hotels, and at the same time, if they did not do that, these hotels would have been shut.
It's true.
So we need to have plan B all the time, or otherwise
C.
we are not going to
Plan
continue.
A, B, C. We have to all the
Exactly.
time be prepared for any circumstances could be happen. And maybe till the revolution time we didn't realize that so much, and we put all the load in one part, and suddenly
Which
we
is?
collapses European field, and European and Americans, and suddenly all that collapses. They discover they are naked. They have
needed
no
to have
support.
another market to fill up.
Exactly.
The Chinese market is not really affected much
Exactly.
by that. Even when the time when there was not a lot of tourists, the Chinese market was pushing a lot towards Egypt. So I think the media.
And look at the Russian.
because
Look
the
what
media-
happened with the
yeah,
Russian
yeah.
field. We was totally depended of the Russians' tourism here in Egypt. And after what happened from the political side and the forbidding them to come, we have forced it to find a new field.
Which is the Ukrainian,
which was exactly amazing. Ukrainian, Romanians, and many other fields. It was very working.
And the Ukrainian market was opened, and that to actually recover what we lost from
so
the
if they come back
Russian
now,
market.
they are planned to come back because we neglect them. We are not giving them much attention because we have another fields. So it wasn't our main life field. You know the feeling you have another sources, it makes you more powerful.
More
this is exactly what we're talking about in African field. If we have African field as a one of our part of our power for tourism, this will be amazing. You know, to open all the time new markets. So in sometimes if one of these markets be collapses, you already have the plan B and the plan C like we had already.
We have to know that we have
advised.
also in Egypt all different categories of hotels.
Yes, true.
It starts from like 5-star plus or 7 stars,
Till 1 star.
all the way to 1 star.
Yes, true.
So if you target only the 5-star people, you're still missing a lot.
Yeah.
The number of people working in tourism here are
Especially the 5 stars people,
really big.
they are the first people who stop to come to Egypt if something happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Or
They're
if
the
they
ones
just
who-
here, they have the fears about traveling, percentage bit more than other people who have
They get more-
a little
more
of money.
sensitive
And
to
all
any
the time,
news,
we
to
need
any
all
media.
categories, you know? It's very-
Although I would say that I think now within maybe the next like the start of the next season, which starts in next September, I think all countries are pushing up. Like we discovered even we having very very good new markets in the last 3 or 4 years, and it was just open because they need to have another solution. If the tourism stops from one side, we need to get other tourists from the other side.
But from what I can see from you both, as one of the very good experts in the medium, it does not only require the 7-star or 5-star hotel or 3-star, it requires also other fields when it comes to attracting different types of tourists, which is happening everywhere else in other, power countries, like the festivities, like the conferences, like the religious tourism, the medical tourism, the cultural tourism, sports
That's
tourism.
what I'm actually
and this is what
recommending.
the government is doing now.
That's what I'm recommending for the government. Is actually we need to sit down, have a plan, a map for the tourism. What we gonna target. We have a season or like low season, which is between June, July, and August. What type of tourists we need to target for that time?
and what we can offer them.
What we can offer
how
them.
we can attract them, how
we
can we
talked
support
before
them.
about getting the tourists to visit the sites at
True.
night time because the day is really hot.
Yes, true.
So we need to find like a whole plan, a whole map. What we're going to do to try to get the tourism up all year round. Tourism is not just a field or part of this Egyptian economy. It actually changes everything. Relationship between countries. It's a cycle of the money throughout the whole entire country. So not just the people working in tourism makes money, but actually the tourist comes for a service,
True.
for food, for everything. So the whole country is working through that. Egyptians, by nature, they were born loving tourists. Whatever I can tell you, the Egyptians are very friendly people. I know other countries that people travels to,
True.
and they're not that friendly. And tourists comes and says that, and that's what best thing that the tourist loves about Egyptians. They're friendly, and that's why I would say that we're supposed to be having a really big field of tourism that needs to be looked after, to be getting a lot of money.
We
and a lot of
deserve
income.
to be like Dubai.
Yeah.
You know, Dubai have nothing. They created everything to be one of the attractive sightseeings, and we have everything. We are not reached the same target. This is very disappointed. Why? Why we missing? We're missing a great plan. You know, we need to organize ourselves. We need to rebuild our ideas to go out of the schedule, the main schedule. We all the time use it, because if you use the same way, you will have the same results. And we don't need the same results. We need a new results. This is required more, crazy ideas sometimes out of the schedule. Try to develop this sector, because really it is deserved to be. Egypt is owning over than 25% of the total monuments of the world. Could you imagine? And we didn't have the target of a 20 million tourists around the world. Could you?
Yeah, we have.
This is very
we have
disappointed,
some-
you know.
Yeah.
But things are changing. But then when we look at the African market, it's brand new in Egypt.
And that's what I'm
So,
saying.
I mean,
they needed to be
ideas
studied.
are very good, but it needs statistics and studies.
Exactly.
And also exploring their history, their culture, and what attracts them or what catch their
I think
attention.
what we need to do is every country, we need to study their economy side, how much they can spend, and how many days, and what type of because there's a lot of different markets, a lot of different fields of tourism. We have the culture, beaches, entertainment, religious, and each one of these can actually form a tour by itself. And each one of these, like, you know, there's some people they love so much the culture, they are ready to go for the culture.
You should prepare in
Yeah.
all the kind of schedules.
All different types. So by this way, you can offer them different types of tours, and you can see which tour are doing much better. So you can actually press
Exactly.
or stress on that one, and you can do better deals. You know, there's a lot of countries, like in Europe, they do charter flights, which is they lower the price of the flight, and that makes the tours to Egypt is going to be less. So by this way, they're looking for the Egyptian market better than a lot of other markets. They're offering higher price for the flights.
Right, but Ms. Shaimaa, also we need to know how can we be able to attract those tourists in a new, innovative way, like borrow experiences, like try to explore or allow people with new ideas. I mean, we talked about studying the market, we talked about studying the means, but right now in our hands, these types of tourists, it's I mean, with the situation now, they are already there, and we need to make the best use of it.
It's not very difficult, by the way, because as I mentioned before, the Africans, they are very decent people. They are not complicated personalities, but they have like a sensitive citizens than other nationalities. So what we need to know to be easy with them.
Sensitive in what way?
Sensitive in what way? They are thinking we are looking them by not a good look, and not the required respect for them. I saw that in their eyes. Some of them was aggressive from the beginning, like they have a tentative feeling from their side what you are going to deal with them. And others say, oh, you are a bad person, you are not that good person. Maybe the propaganda or the backside wasn't good. So when they arrived here, they found a very welcome, warming welcome from Egyptian side. How the Egyptian, as Mr. Sherief said, the normal people on the street, they are so friendly, they help you, they offer you help even without any personal target. This is make them feel home. So they have many
I
plans
think
to
the
sit in
friendliness
Egypt.
is number one.
Exactly.
And the friendliness because we are African. So the going there
They're
and saying we
brothers.
are brothers,
Yes,
we are actually
they're
sharing the
brothers,
same
like-
continent. Whatever the differences in politics or in other things, we were one day, we're actually the first people or the people of this
All the
continent.
barriers have to be crossed.
Exactly, exactly. Going through that friendly way and like, you know, and booming, like, you know, that the tourism will be booming from that side because Africans are hot-blooded. They're really kind-hearted, but maybe whatever happens, like, of not knowing each other or whatever, but if going through the friendly way and saying that we're African, we're part sharing the same
We need to prove
continent,
that practically,
we need to know about
we
us,
need
you
to clear the bad ideas, which were, I don't care where they get it from, but already we are in the story. We are in the situation. We need to give them, no, we are care about you. You are not a second class like some people thinking about. We are so interested to investment, the relationship between the countries. I think this is come by tourism. Tourism can solve all the problems which political diplomatics couldn't do it in a longer time term.
True, tourism is one of the elements of soft power. By this
Exactly.
very optimistic note, we're going to be ending it here. Ms. Shaimaa Ismail, you are one of the top-notch tourism experts. Mr. Sherief Hassan, you're one of our prominent guests and an excellent tourism expert. Thank you very much and happy Byron
You're
to all of you.
welcome. Like-
And I guess this brings us to the end of this edition of Windows on Current Affairs. Thank you very much for joining us. And until we see you again next week, that's a goodbye.